All right, welcome to the Church Dropout Podcast. My name is Alan. I'm the host. Church Dropout is a podcast. We talk about issues, topics, and teachings related to faith, life, and culture in ways that are sometimes funny, sometimes serious, but always insightful. If you have not already, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment below. Keep the conversation moving forward. So there was a lot that I wanted to respond to in this interview that Beth Stucky had with this gentleman named Raymond Ibrahim. I believe that's how you pronounce it. Apologies if I'm mispronouncing it. But she had this conversation on Jesus and jihad and this war against Christians and Islam in the context of America. Okay. And there's so much that I wanted to respond to in this thing. Like, man, there were just, some of this stuff was just like, oh, it was straw manning, and playing down other things to emphasize, certain ideas. I mean, the way he discussed, love, or the way he defined it, used this term muscular love, agape love is not, it's not sentimental, but we should have a muscular love. That's what the Crusaders did. And there's so much in here to discuss. I mean, you should go back and watch the whole video. And it's horrible. This rhetoric, listen, let's just be real. This all has to lead to something. And I believe there's going to come a time where, because all of this is leading to, honestly, justifying violence as a response, and Christians are trying to build up this self-defense theory that we're being attacked and assaulted by immigrants, by this, all of these different people groups and the religions, and where else can this end? You know what I'm saying? And so that's why people are talking about the Crusades and reframing the Crusades in a way that speaks to us being able to respond to these things in a certain way. But the problem is it just does not fit with New Testament Christianity. It just doesn't. It doesn't fit with what Jesus spoke about. It doesn't fit with how Jesus lived. And it definitely doesn't fit with what Jesus exampled. And so, there was so much to respond to. In fact, I started the video, I was going to talk about the whole love thing and this, that, and this, but man, I was already at 40 minutes talking about that section and hadn't even got to the section that I wanted to talk about today. And maybe I'll go back and do something on that. But I want to talk, specifically about what he says about Jesus and how they're justifying this and using Jesus to justify it and trying to switch who Jesus is in order to fit this violent narrative that Christians need to physically push back against evil. That is pushing back darkness. That's what it's coming to. And Beth Stucky says this thing where, Christians need to push back evil and protect these individuals. The problem is that the Christian worldview is not just about protecting one people group. It's not just about protecting Americans. Christianity is a universal religion. And in fact, we're called to love even our enemies. And so when we're pushing back darkness, we're not doing that in the name of protecting just, our people. That's not even what the Bible was talking about when it comes to pushing back darkness. Pushing back darkness is the job of the church. The gates of hell will not prevail against the church, not America. But this is what it's become. So yeah, I want to talk about how he defines Jesus in terms of, how Jesus did violence. It was a small comment that he made in there. And it's like, what? Right? But all of this in the end is calling to justify Christians being able to, or approving certain actions that are being taken right now by the American government, and also actions that will come. But remember, I look at scripture and it's just like, listen, Romans 13 is always used in terms of how Christians need to support government, but we ignore what came before that. And when it, when it says, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, right? Do not repay evil with evil. It says in there that it's the Christian's job to love. The government is there for a reason. You are here for a reason as a Christian, and your responsibility is to love. And when the government gets out of line, it's your job as a Christian to continue to do what God commanded you to, not to lay down your rights to the government. And we're not seeing that here. So I'm gonna start this, and I think I started it a little early. So I might be talking about some things before leading up to that point. And again, those of you who get annoyed by me stopping and starting the video will be linked below. You can go watch the video. I don't know what else to tell you, but I'm probably going to stop and go. All right. I'm not smart enough to hold my thoughts. Okay. And so, I got to get them out. I can't, I'll forget, brother getting old, losing my mind and stuff like this. So anyway, let me start the video, and then we will go from there.
I think Christians have forgotten our responsibility to restrain evil and to push back against evil for the sake of the vulnerable. I mean, you talk about those who forged the Crusades, caring for the vulnerable, women, children, people who couldn't defend themselves. I mean, it's the same thing with a lot of issues today. We push back against those pushing evil because of the people over here who are being affected by those evil policies or actions or whatever. Right. I think
the problem with this idea that she's, this biblical principle that she's using to relate to what's being done in America about, pushing back evil to protect these people over here. The problem is you're being biased towards the group of people that you're protecting. That's the problem. You're being biased towards the people you're correcting. I mean, you're protecting. And that is not a Christian worldview. That is not a Christian perspective. Christianity is not an American religion, and it's not a Western religion. Christianity has universal implications, and God calls people from all nations. But what's happening is we're cherry picking and using scriptures to defend our point of view, or our American point of view, not a gospel-centered worldview. We are called to love all people and to protect all people from injustices. That's the question is how are we to protect? How are we to overturn injustices? And you'll see that the idea of protecting these injustices, like the Crusaders, right? Reframing the whole Crusades, like the Crusaders, is to repay evil with evil. Is to fight physically, and this is what it's coming to, right? And again, he's going to say it here, but this term muscular love, and that's just a weird term. Like, I honestly, that's just sound crazy to, muscular love. Like, anyway, I kind of feel like some of these guys are, pushing like a red pill Christianity. Like, I don't know. It's just weird. So anyway, I'll keep going.
The hard thing is that Christians want to know, like on an everyday basis, is what does that muscular Christianity look like? Because at the end of the day, I've got way more Muslims in my neighborhood. I've got a mosque really close to my house that wasn't there 10 years ago. And that's just reality. And I'm just a mom. And so I think a lot of people don't know what to do. So they flee to the country, hoping that it doesn't follow them there. And they just don't know. They see it's a problem, but they don't know what to do. So what is your take on that?
Okay, let me back.
Well, my take on that is the real.
Way more Muslims in my neighborhood. I've forgotten our responsibility to restrain evil and to push back.
Okay, so Christians have forgotten their responsibility to refrain evil and to push back against darkness. I think Christians in America have forgotten a lot of things, but here's where I think the disconnect is. And this is, it's how are Christians, how are those who follow Jesus, who are Jesus followers, how are we called to push back darkness and push back evil, resist evil? restrain evil, rather. How do we do that? And what's interesting is the answer to that is, for a lot of Christians today, is Christian government, is Christian principles or biblical principles, Christian values, will restrain evil and push back darkness. I think Christians have forsaken the gospel. I think Christians have traded the gospel for the government. I was going to say this in a different video, and I'll say it again there because everybody won't watch this one, but our relationship to the government has exceeded engagement. It's exceeded that. It's now entered into hope. It's exceeded engagement. Now the Christian hope is government. Why do you think Christians are getting so emotional over government and politics? They show more passion for that than they do for the gospel. It's become our hope. The hope for the world is not America. The hope for the world is not democracy. The hope for the world is not doing what America does. This is a man-made system that was created by flawed human beings, right? And generally what happens is it's incomplete of all value. It's incomplete of I guess I should say that it is not able, right, to live out the Christian worldview because of it. And listen, like, none of that can save the world anyway. The only thing that can truly transform and have lasting change, that can push back evil or restrain evil, push back darkness, is the Christian gospel. It's being transformed by the love of God. That's it. That's the hope. And Christians have stopped engaging politics and started putting their hope in it. Again, like you can scroll through some of these people who are Christians, and you can see, what they talk about is where their heart is. It just is what it is. So anyway, let me keep going here because I got on a rabbit trail.
Back against evil for the sake of the vulnerable. I mean, You talk about those who forged the Crusades, caring for the vulnerable, women, children, people who couldn't defend themselves. I mean, it's the same thing with a lot of issues today. We push back against those pushing evil because of the people over here who are being affected by those evil policies.
Which people are we talking about? The problem with what she's saying is she's talking about she's being biased toward a specific people group, and that is not consistent with a Christian worldview. We push back evil, and we fight against injustice of all people. It's not just your people. See, this is the problem. This is what's being used to justify the treatment of people groups and people in America in a way that's not Christ-like. And listen, if you actually, this is the other thing, like you're talking about pushing back darkness and evil and ignoring what darkness and evil you're aligning yourself with to push back evil. You see what I'm saying? Like how can this, I don't understand that. You'll justify the actions of an individual who, like Trump, who displays the opposite of what Christianity does. But because he's a part of a party that you aligned yourself with, that evil doesn't matter. Doesn't even get talked about. What about the vulnerable people that are being hurt by that rhetoric? You see what I'm saying? Like, it's being biased towards the protection of certain people groups, the people groups that they want to, and those are Americans. And by American, that's even, there is even an America within America. Those who aren't conservative are a different type of American. And this is proven, with them saying things like, Democrats don't love America. right? This is evil, man. This tie to government is evil.
Actions or whatever.
Right.
I think the hard thing is that Christians want to know, like on an everyday basis, is what does that muscular Christianity look like? Because at the end of the day, I've got way more Muslims in my neighborhood.
What does muscular Christianity look like? There is no such thing as muscular Christianity. Like when you got to put these things in front of Christianity, Christianity ceases to be what it is. When you say conservative Christian or liberal Christian or American Christian, then that thing that it represents is failing to be what it is. You've actually united it with an idea, or you've made it solely about that idea. You've chosen to see it through this lens. So the question that she's asking, what does that look like? What does muscular Christianity look like? And she ties it directly to the Crusades. That's what muscular love looks like. It looks like, religious folks protecting their family and their loved ones from this onslaught of evil. That would be true about the Crusades if that's what the Crusades were. Because I think in this I don't know if it's coming up here. I've watched so much of it. I don't know where it's at. But they even said, the Crusades were about, land and, about the Holy Lands and stuff like that. But they're trying to soften it and make it about, oh man, people were being hurt and things were happening to women and children. And so the Crusaders were the ones who protected them. Okay, they protected them by, sailing, and traveling into the Holy Lands, to protect them. As they said from their own conversation, Islam wasn't in the West. And so we had to go protect our children, from these people. And again, all of this stuff sounds very familiar with how we are thinking through, protecting America and its values. And, you got Christians who are saying my family's at risk here and different things of that sort. Like, listen, all of us want to keep danger away from our families. The question is how do we do it? And unfortunately, it's going to boil down to violence. And this is what it's gearing up for. If you notice, hate is pushing further and further to the forefront. I mean, it is atrocious what some Christians are saying. It's clearly against what Jesus would have us do. But it's justified. Listen, the ends do not justify the means. Not in Christianity.
A mosque really close to my house that wasn't there 10 years ago. And that's just reality. And I'm just a mom. And so I think a lot of people don't know what to do. So they flee to the country, hoping that it doesn't follow them there. And they just they don't know. They see it's a problem, but they don't know what to do. So what is your
Okay, let me just say this before he gives his take on it. This is interesting because where's the hope of the gospel in that? I see Muslims are becoming more prominent in my neighborhood. There's a mosque in my neighborhood that wasn't there 10 years ago. I'm just a mom. You know what I mean? And so, most people have just moved away. And this is so interesting that she said that. It's so interesting. I'm going to do a video here pretty soon on how evangelism has changed. But, she says people just move away and do different things of that sort. Well, now that's not happening. What's happening now is to rid America of people who are different. It's more or less go back where you came from. And Christians are actually saying this. But anyway, you're more than a mom. If you follow Jesus, you're more than a mom. Your identity is in Christ. You are a Christian. You are one who follows Jesus, and you have the truth. this downplaying of what Christians have as what Christians have to their benefit. Again, I think I really don't believe that we have gospel hope anymore. I just don't believe that. We don't think that the gospel can transform, people who are evil. And she's a Calvinist, right? Like people are, in her worldview. I mean, people are evil, right? And I'm not saying that they're not. They just have a morbid way of thinking through this. But anyway, I'm not here to talk about that. But I'm saying this to say, do we believe that the gospel, the Spirit of God, can change the hearts of those people in that neighborhood? Ten years ago, Christians would have said the answer to that is to engage with the gospel. Now let's hear what he has to say.
Take on that.
Well, my take on that is the real problem, and believe it or not, I don't think the problem right now is even Islam, because Islam is inherently weak in the modern era. Islam's only a problem when you let it be a problem. Okay, so if you look at Europe, for example, it's a huge problem in various countries, right? The UK and France and Spain, Italy, most of Western Europe. Meanwhile, in Hungary and Poland, there's not a problem. And why is that? Are they going to war? No, they just said, no thanks. Okay, so that my point is, it's an easily fixed problem, which goes back to what you were saying, because they were confined to their own realm, they're not going to hurt you if they're there, right? So I think it's important to keep in mind, and that's why people get upset. One time a lot of English people are saying Muslims are invading England. Sorry, they're not. They're being welcomed in. There's a big difference. Okay. Right. Invasion is when you're resisting and fighting.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. But when they're being brought in and treated like kings, that's not an invasion. So my point is, if you want to, before you can address a problem, you have to locate the source. And it's actually a mistake to think the source is the Muslims. Okay. The source is the people enabling and allowing this to happen. I often give the analogy of, if I go to a zoo and there's an enclosure of zebras, and then I put a line, and then the lion, lo and behold, kills the zebras. Who's really at fault, me or the lion? I think it's me. The lion's doing what the lion's going to do.
Yeah.
The Muslim's going to do what the Muslim's going to do. But but it's the person who's insisting on bringing them in and putting them in and forcing you to suppress your culture and your heritage and everything about your life so you can accommodate them. That's the problem. So I think, Islam.
It's so interesting how this conversation always ends up to suppressing the way we live our life. I just read something they were talking about. I think it was Matt Walsh was just saying that, we need to protect our culture. And again, the culture of America is not biblical culture. It's not Christian culture. It can't be. Right. And again, where was Jesus and where was the gospel in any of that? You know what I mean? Like all I heard was we can't let them in. The problem is not letting them in. The problem is letting them in. Listen, how do you say no thank you? You purge the community. I'm telling you, this rhetoric has nothing to do with Christ. Has nothing to do with it. It's about saving America. Has nothing to do with Christ. Our mission is different. And our mission is not to push Christian values. That is not the mission of the church. That's a byproduct of the church doing its job. But that is not the job of the church. And when we see evil, when we encompass or we come against evil, we do it with what has the power to change or transform it. This is not the approach that Christians should take. America can do whatever it wants. But the Christian, the response is to fight evil with good. And the greatest good, or the greatest good that we have, is the good news. But I'll say this too. This is the reason why people are trying to link Christianity with America. I mean, for instance, look at the title. Jihad versus Jesus. There was no talk in here. Well, very little talk about Jesus, and we're going to talk about something. We're going to hear something in a minute. Islam's plan to conquer Christian America. What is Christian America? What is Christian America? You see what I'm saying? Like Christian America. See, like people think America is Christian, and that they think that there's some type of divine blessing on America, to the point where America should be Christian. It's funny how people say they're not Christian nationalists, but then they say Christian nationalist things.
Is an inherent issue that can be, it's very finite and can be dealt with, especially if you don't live in the Islamic world. If you're a Christian or a non-Muslim living under Islam, that's a different story. But in America, for example, or even Europe, you are creating your own problem by inviting it in. Okay, so it's actually an easily fixed problem. But it goes back to what you're saying, this whole, and what's happening in the West, where it's not just that they're bringing them in, is they also don't even have the sort of moral fiber to respond anymore, because it's been stripped away. Because to be a Christian, like I said, the chief virtue is you're a doormat. Mm-hmm. You don't do anything. You don't argue. You don't speak up. Okay, this would have been so bizarre for other Christians. That would have been seen as evil, actually, because you're an accomplice. Mm-hmm. Okay, I mean, is that how Jesus behaved? We forget Jesus made a whip of cords and engaged in violence and hurled.
Okay, here we go. So here we go. Listen, I'm telling you, these people worship a different Jesus. He actually said Jesus did violence. In order to defend Christians doing violence. This is what he's saying. He's like, listen, and this thing about doormat Christianity, I don't know who's saying that. Like, I don't even know what that is. Let people walk over you and this, that, and this. Listen, whatever he's defining as doormat Christianity, the things that he's talking about, the things that most people are talking about, are things that Jesus did. Jesus was not a doormat, but Jesus served. Jesus loved. But what he's talking about is, Jesus did violence. I mean, he created a whip of cords, and okay. And what did he do with that whip of cords? He turned over tables. Okay, we're not talking about that. We're not talking about Jesus turning over some tables. Did Jesus ever go out and murder his enemies? He could have. He had a conversation with Pilate, and he's like, listen, I can end this now. I can call down my crew from heaven. Like, I can get busy right now. He could have done that, but he didn't. Is he a doormat Christian? But no, you got to change who Jesus is in order to fit your narrative. Jesus did violence. That is crazy. That's crazy. I'm telling you, they worship a different Jesus. This is not the Jesus of the Bible. Jesus did violence. And the examples that he used are Jesus turning over tables and making a cord of whips and driving people out of the temple because they were using it to get money. It doesn't say anything about, oh, he whipped all the people in there. He used a cord of whips to affect the tables, to affect, let all the animals out, all that. Listen, that's not violence. That's not violence. That is not equal to the Crusades. That is not equal to standing up to people we quote unquote call our enemies. Why would Jesus say, love your enemies? I'm telling you, this is not Jesus of the Bible. It's not. It's a totally different Jesus. This is an American Jesus who is not Jesus at all.
Tables, okay? So again, I'm not saying Jesus is violent, but there's a time for everything.
Right.
I'm not saying that Jesus is violent, but there's a time for everything. So there's a time for Christians to be violent, is what he's saying. There's a time for Christians to stand up and be violent. Where else in Scripture do you see Christians called to that? I do not see Christians called to that anywhere in Scripture. I don't. I'm not talking about a theocracy under God, because this is not a theocracy. I don't see anywhere in the revelation that Jesus brings of who God is and how God interacts with the world and what God expects from his people. I do not see anything in the New Testament that would justify that. Again, like Romans 13, we take that, we got to submit the government, obey the government here, there. The government is, God puts government in place and this, that, and this. Yeah, but he says also for the Christian, not for the government, for the Christian, don't pay evil, repay evil with repay evil with evil. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. That's the whole reason why he was saying that about government. But I say that to say, man, listen, people are transforming Jesus and the gospel, and you hear it. You hear it in how people talk online, all these keyboard thugs. You hear it how people talk online and how people speak about, what Christians ought to be doing, how they should be thinking about these things. You see it. Jesus did not do violence. He didn't do violence. He's definitely not violent, but he didn't do violence either.
Time for resistance. There's a time for forgiveness. There's a time for, and it seems that everything has been stripped and it's just, you're a doormat. There's a time for resistance.
There's a time for, what do you say? Time for resistance. Let's see. Don't want to get his words wrong.
And hurled tables, okay? So again, I'm not saying Jesus is violent, but there's a time for everything. Right. There's a time for resistance. There's a time for forgiveness.
Okay, there's a time for resistance. There's a time for forgiveness. Where in the Bible does it say that? We are people of forgiveness. We forgive 70 times 70, which is not a number. This is what we do. And the question is not whether or not Christians are supposed to resist evil. It's how are Christians supposed to resist evil? Violence is not an answer to evil. Not in the Christian realm. It's just not. I mean, anyway, I have a few things to say after this that I think will touch on that. Let me get past this real quick.
Time for, and it seems that everything has been stripped and it's just, you're a doormat. I saw, I often mention this, the Super Bowl, like maybe 2 years ago, and to have a commercial in the Super Bowl is like a big thing. Everyone's watching it, and this commercial just pops up, and it's just scenes, okay, of people sitting, getting their feet washed, right? And then at the very end, it says, Jesus didn't preach hate. He washed feet.
He gets us.
Yeah. One of those, right? And then, but there was something interesting. It wasn't just random people washing random people's feet. Everyone on their hands and knees was like a white woman or a white man who looks traditional, conservative, maybe Christian. And everyone getting their foot washed was a trans person, a Muslim man, a Muslim woman in a hijab, and an illegal migrant apparently because it's like at the border. All right. So that is the message they want Christians to embrace. If you want
It's what Jesus told us to do. So, we wash the feet of certain people. Did you forget that Jesus washed the disciples' feet? Do you realize that Jesus washed Judas's feet? Dude, what are we talking about here? That is not doormat behavior. That's Christ-like behavior. And let me say this about the He Gets Us. I did a video on this. You should go look it up. I did a video on it. If you look at that commercial, both parties have their feet off. Both parties have their shoes off. To me, what is what is it? What word am I looking for? Okay, let me just simplify this. What it's saying is there's a mutual foot washing, not going one way. I'm not, I'm not advocating for He Gets Us, but what I am advocating for, when you're biased in your own mind and you are pushing for a certain outcome, you can't see nothing but that outcome. Everything you see is interpreted by that. And this is what is so dangerous about adding these things to our worldview. It's sort of like when in the Old Testament, God told the king, hey, don't intermarry because they're going to change you. It's kind of the same mentality. When you start pulling in various worldviews, you start changing the primary worldview. And everything you see is through that lens. And you start to be biased and forget or not see things that are obvious to you. This is why Christians need to remain kingdom focused.
to be a Christian, then your whole job is to just enable anything I want. Yeah, serve me. Okay. And
your whole job is to enable people that first, here they go, using these terms that are charged, you're an enabler to serve people. He actually she says serve people. You're just here to serve people. Isn't that what the scriptures say? I guess not.
It's just sad because I think a lot of Christians believe that's the case.
Well, unfortunately, a lot of Christians feel that that is the case. I wonder where they're getting this idea from. I wonder where these Christians are getting this idea from that we serve people, all people. We demonstrate Christ's love and we share the gospel, not only in word, but in deed. We imitate Christ. So here's a few things that I just wanted to say. Listen, Jesus was nonviolent. He was nonviolent. To me, there's no argument there, right? Jesus consistently taught and modeled nonviolence throughout his ministry, emphasizing peace and reconciliation rather than armed conflict. Jesus was nonviolent. He refused to wage in the battle. He refused to wage war in the way of the world. The way of the world, how to resolve conflict is to fight, argue, debate, Jesus was like, no, the way to overcome evil is with good. Jesus was about redemptive sacrifice. Jesus' sacrifice on the cross exemplifies overcoming evil through love and self-giving without resorting to violence as a means of achieving justice. Man, listen, Jesus fought evil by giving himself. Like, if anybody was going to be considered to be a doormat, wouldn't that be the person who doesn't defend themselves? Who just allows, because this is what they're saying, who allows things to happen to themselves? Right? Jesus could have abolished a lot of things with his power, but instead he chose to humble himself and to care for others more than his own self and to transform people from the inside out. He did not fight evil with evil. We are called to follow Jesus, which brings up my next point. We're called to follow his example. I think we don't do enough of looking at Jesus's life as an example. We've totally theologized Jesus to the point where the practical walk of Jesus doesn't matter. We want to ponder about it. Jesus walked to this village. What does that mean? We want to ponder it. What theological significance of this? What principle can we extract from Jesus's life? The principle you can extract is exampling. Jesus was the example. He said, follow me. Follow me. How can you not do what Jesus did if you're following him? It's so interesting that when Jesus called the disciples, they said, listen, you're the Son of God. You are the one. And then, he says, follow me and see. Come see. Come and see. Experience it. Follow me. Framing Jesus' sacrifice as a justification for warfare blurs the distinction between the values of Jesus' kingdom and the flawed motivations of earthly kingdoms. You are submitting Christ's teaching of love and mercy and forgiveness to a corrupt, motivation of a worldly kingdom. Jesus's way is incompatible with the powers of this world. You cannot reconcile the two. And when you start trying, like we're actually believing that flexing our Christian muscles is what's going to change the world. That's power. And that will not inherit the earth. It's the opposite of what Jesus said. We're called as Christians to imitate Christ's teachings, love, mercy, and forgiveness, which are fundamentally incompatible with the justification of war. I challenge you, go look up just war theory. Just look it up. There are components that one should take into consideration before enacting violence. The problem is with the things that are being said. There's never a reason to enact violence on others. This is why they're trying to make a case for self-defense. Everything that's happening is being done to us. The problem is that the self-defense that people are claiming is only to protect one people group. That directly goes against what Jesus was teaching. The New Testament, when Jewish believers tried to exile or tried to deny, Gentiles. I mean, we're acting like that right now, right? It's like, no, I have sheep from other folds. In the name of some of these people, in the name of trying to advance God's kingdom, they're working against it. You're tearing down what Christ is building up. And then here's the last part, the misuse of Christian teachings to justify war, such as during the Crusades, often contradicts the essence of Jesus's message and perpetuated cycles of violence. This is the thing. It's like I said earlier, the ultimate goal is to take action. And Christians are going to be put in a position where they're going to have to choose what sort of action they're willing to take. And, this just came to my mind. When the religious sect was trying to get Jesus killed, they were using the government to do so. They were saying, we can't condemn anyone to death, but you can. Listen, we're trying to petition the government to do things that Christians should have nothing to do with. But again, because we've made Christianity a part of Americanism, it changes what Christianity is. So anyway, as usual, we'd love to hear your thoughts on any of this. I know I rambled on a lot, but there was a lot here. I think that needs to be said. There's so much in this interview that could be talked about. If you have watched it and all of that, drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. But thank you again for tuning in to Church Dropout. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment below. Keep the conversation moving forward. Talk to you soon. God bless.